On Thanksgiving morning, as emails exposing 7 years of academic fraud detonated across Stanford's servers, my parents finally learned what my quiet fine really meant. Thanksgiving morning broke cold and bright over the Miller house in Bellevue, the kind of brittle northwest sunlight that made everything look sharper than it should. I stood in my childhood bedroom surrounded by half-packed boxes, the MIT acceptance letter resting on my desk like a loaded truth I hadn't delivered yet. Downstairs, I could hear the faint clatter of my mother preparing for the family brunch she insisted would be all about celebrating Nathan's fellowship. At 7:58 a.m., my phone buzzed. 2 minutes. My scheduled emails, reports, evidence folders, video walkthroughs of document logs were lined up like dominoes in the cloud, ready to fall. I sat on the edge of the bed, spine straight, hands steady in a way they hadn't been for months. Footsteps climbed the stairs. Nathan's heavy tread, confident as always, like the house itself owed him silence. He pushed my door open without knocking. "Morning, sis," he said, wearing Stanford scrubs and a grin that made my stomach twist. "You ready to apologize before the relatives get here? Mom says we should heal as a family today." "I thought a lot about it," I replied, checking my phone. "Good," he said, already turning away. "Let's not make this day harder than it needs to be." I followed him downstairs. The kitchen smelled of sage, cinnamon, and something metallic tension, maybe. Dad looked up from carving the turkey. "Lauren," he said, in that performative calm he used when pretending to be the reasonable parent, "we expect a sincere apology before brunch. Your brother's reputation can't survive any more of your accusations." "Of course," I said softly. 8 a.m. My phone vibrated. Once, twice. Then, it continues, like a heartbeat accelerating. The emails had been sent. Nathan's phone buzzed too, then buzzed harder, lighting up with rapid-fire notifications. His smile faltered. "What the?" He opened one, then another, and another. His face drained of color. Dad frowned. "What's going on?" Nathan whispered. Stanford's research compliance office? They're opening an investigation?" Another notification. Stanford Hospital. Immediate review of clinical protocols. Then another. California Medical Board. Requesting urgent meeting. A coffee mug slipped from his hand and shattered, sending ceramic shrapnel across the tiles. Mom jumped. "Nathan?" she gasped. "Sweetheart, what is that? What's happening?" I stepped closer to the counter, letting the rising chaos wash over me like warm air after a long winter. "They're just emails," I said. Nathan spun toward me, eyes wild. "What did you do?" "I followed proper reporting channels," I replied. "Everything's documented." Dad slammed his palms onto the counter. "Lauren, this better not be what I think." "Actually," I said quietly, "it's exactly what you think." Mom grabbed Nathan's arm, voice trembling. But you said she lied. You said she was unstable. You said, I didn't think she'd..." Nathan stuttered, scrolling frantically. The room fell into a stunned silence, filled only by the steady pinging of incriminating notifications. Outside, wind rattled the last brown leaves clinging to the maples. Inside, the golden boy of the family watched his empire crack open in real time. My parents finally really looked at me for the first time in years. "Lauren," Dad said, voice low, "what did you send them?" I lifted my phone, the MIT letter gleaming behind me on the desk upstairs. My escape already prepared. "The truth," I said, and for the first time that morning, I smiled. The earliest memories I have of the Miller household are divided neatly into 2 categories. Moments when Nathan excelled, and moments when I was expected to applaud him. Everything else, my own achievements, struggles, or hopes, fit somewhere in the margins like scribbles on a grocery receipt. Growing up in Bellevue, Nathan was the prodigy, the son destined for greatness. When he qualified for Washington State's Junior Biomedical Challenge in 8th grade, Dad rented a banquet room at a country club for a celebration dinner. When I placed second in a statewide chemistry competition years later, Mom congratulated me by saying, "Sweetie, Imagine how proud we'd be if you were just a little more like Nathan. Those words built the air I breathed. At the University of Washington, I found refuge in research. Polymer chemistry felt like something that belonged to me, something Nathan hadn't taken yet. My project on pH-responsive drug delivery polymers had consumed my entire junior year, and for the first time, my advisor praised me in a way that didn't feel performative. "You have real potential, Lauren," he told me. "This work is original, publishable, original, publishable, mine." 3 weeks later, a classmate forwarded me a medical journal article with a casual, joking text. "Hey, isn't this similar to the stuff you're always talking about?" The title hit me like a punch. Innovative Biopolymer Coatings for Orthopedic Implants. Nathan Miller, Stanford School of Medicine. My vision tunneled. My hands shook so hard I nearly dropped my laptop. It wasn't similar. It was identical. Entire paragraphs, my experimental notes, polymer degradation curves, even one typo I'd made in an early draft were printed under Nathan's name. The illustrations were the same diagrams I had made in my UW lab, only recolored in Stanford's signature blue. For several minutes, all I could do was stare at the screen. The impossible had happened, and yet it wasn't impossible at all. Nathan had always had my passwords growing up. Mom insisted siblings share everything, and he took advantage of that generosity long before I understood the meaning of boundaries. That night, I went to the UW library and combed through every version of my files, every Google Doc revision, every saved timestamp on the university server. Then I cross-referenced access logs through a friend in the IT department. At 2:14 a.m., one night in March while Nathan was home visiting, my account had been accessed from a California IP traced to Stanford's hospital network. The pieces clicked together with terrifying ease. I confronted him the following weekend when he came home for Easter. His old bedroom was a shrine to his glory-framed awards, medals, letters of recommendation carefully displayed like museum pieces. I placed my printed comparisons on his desk. "Nathan, this is my work," I said quietly. Word for word. He skimmed the papers, then leaned back in his chair, lifting his arms behind his head with that lazy confidence he'd worn since childhood. "Lauren, research overlaps all the time. If you publish someday, you'll understand. Relax. I have timestamps, revision histories, access logs. You logged into my account." He shrugged. "Maybe you left it open. Maybe you're confused. Maybe you're overwhelmed." That last word was deliberate, a weapon. Then he leaned in, voice dropping to a cold whisper. "Listen, little sister. I've worked too hard for you to screw this up. If you start spreading accusations, Mom and Dad will assume you're having some kind of breakdown, which, honestly, wouldn't be surprising. You've always been sensitive. Sensitive. The family code word for unreliable. I felt something crack inside me then, not my confidence, but the illusion I'd clung to my whole life, that Nathan, beneath his arrogance, still cared. He didn't. He saw me as a resource, a tool, a way to decorate his career with brilliance that wasn't his. And that was the moment I stopped being afraid of him. The living room smelled like roasted turkey, pine-scent candles, and tension so thick it could choke a grown man. By noon, the Miller Thanksgiving celebration, and more importantly, the Nathan Fellowship recognition brunch, was in full swing. Laughter echoed, wine flowed, and every relative seemed to orbit Nathan like he was the sun itself. I stood near the staircase, clutching a folder of carefully printed evidence, feeling like an intruder at my own family's holiday. My heart thudded not in fear, but in a strange electric clarity. Mom's voice rang out, proud enough to split glass. "And our Nathan just published another article. His polymer coating might revolutionize orthopedic implants." There it was. My work, my stolen work, being praised as if God himself had handed it to Nathan. A buzzing started in my ears, not panic, but indignation so sharp it felt like light. I stepped forward. "Actually," I said, my voice steady, "I'd like to share something about that research." The room quieted with the suddenness of a power outage. Dozens of eyes turned to me, the forgotten daughter daring to interrupt the golden sun. Nathan's jaw tensed. "Lauren, not now." But it was now or never. I opened the folder and handed packets around the table, comparisons, timestamps, logs. Nathan's article is identical to my polymer research at UW. Word for word, diagram for diagram, even the flaws. He didn't just borrow ideas, he hacked my account and took everything before I submitted it. Gasps, whispers. Someone's fork clattered. For a split second, there was raw truth hanging in the air like a fragile glass ornament. Then Nathan shattered it. He stood, placing a hand dramatically over his heart. I can't believe this, he said, voice trembling with well-practiced vulnerability. She's been struggling academically. She's overwhelmed. I told Mom and Dad she needed counseling. Now she's attacking me with fabricated evidence. Mom rushed to him instantly, wrapping her arms around him like he was a wounded soldier coming home from war. "Oh, my sweet boy," she whispered. "You don't have to suffer this." Dad's face hardened into a wall of disappointment as he turned to me. "Lauren, enough. Your brother earned everything through hard work. This jealousy ends today." Jealousy. That word stabbed deeper than any insult. All my life, it had been the default explanation any time I dared to want something of my own. I forced myself to breathe, to stay anchored, even as humiliation burned behind my ribs. "Look at the evidence," I said. "The logs, the revision dates, Dad slammed his palm on the table. "Stop. You will apologize to your brother. Right now. Or we will stop paying for UW. We will stop covering your rent. We will not fund someone who tries to destroy her own family." His words detonated inside me. I had always known the truth. My place in this family was conditional. Conditional on silence, on obedience, on disappearing so Nathan could shine brighter. Around the table, relatives shifted uncomfortably. Aunt Erin looked torn. Uncle Brad pressed his lips together. Grandpa, always the engineer, reached for the packet, but Dad snatched it away. "We're not entertaining delusions," he growled. The humiliation was total. The betrayal was complete. The final thread holding together the illusion of family snapped with an almost audible crack. And then, suddenly, everything inside me stilled. Not anger, not fear, just clarity, pure and cold. If I apologized, I would lose myself forever. If I didn't, I would lose them. But I had already lost them years ago. They simply never noticed. So I smiled. For the first time, it felt real. "All right," I said. Relief washed over their faces, beautiful, tragic irony. They thought I meant surrender. But what I meant was freedom. What I meant was, "You will never control me again." What I meant was, "You have no idea what's coming." I turned and walked upstairs, the evidence packets still scattered on the table behind me like discarded truths. As Nathan began to deliver another speech about forgiveness and family unity, my mind was already miles ahead, thinking about my encrypted files, my scheduled reports, and my planned escape route. Downstairs, they celebrated. Upstairs, I prepared for the storm. 6 months before that explosive Thanksgiving morning, everything began with a single comment Nathan made during a rare family dinner. He mentioned offhandedly that his high school science fair project had been cited in a European research journal. The claim slid into the conversation so casually that no one questioned it except me. Nathan never did original work in high school. I remembered because I was the one who helped him glue his posters while he played video games. That night, curiosity tugged at me until I opened my laptop in my dorm room at UW. One search led to another, and soon I was staring at a paper published by a graduate student in Munich, submitted just 2 weeks before Nathan's science fair deadline years ago. The methodology was nearly identical. Too identical. A slow, sinking realization pulled at my chest. The polymer theft wasn't an isolated betrayal. Perhaps it was part of something bigger, something that had been built over time, like sediment hardening into stone. What started as suspicion turned into a methodical investigation. I spent evenings buried in databases, scrolling through archives of science fairs, undergraduate symposiums, and obscure international journals. Patterns emerged like footprints in wet sand. A paragraph stolen here, a graph lifted there. A high school paper reflected an Argentinian study. A Stanford group project mysteriously became Nathan's solo publication. The more I uncovered, the more a picture formed of someone who didn't just bend rules, he dismantled them piece by piece. When the scope grew too large for scattered screenshots, I began organizing everything into folders labeled by year: high school, undergraduate, medical school, residency, 7 years of extraction, repackaging, and self-promotion. 7 years of praise built on the backs of researchers who never knew their work had been siphoned away. The access logs were the final proof. A friend in the UW IT department owed me a favor for tutoring him in Chem 142. With careful boundaries and full legality on his end, he guided me through the process of requesting my own account logs. The records showed multiple unauthorized logins during the exact windows when drafts of my polymer study had been edited or downloaded. The IP matched the Stanford Hospital network. One night, 2:14 a.m., smack in the middle of Nathan's spring visit home. Piece after piece fell exactly where instinct told me they would, but evidence alone wasn't enough. I knew how the world worked, how institutions protected their own, how medical programs reacted to scandal, how easily whistleblowers were dismissed as jealous, unstable, emotional. I couldn't give them a reason to ignore me, so I formalized everything. I wrote clean, structured reports for each audience, including the Stanford School of Medicine, Stanford Hospital's Research Compliance Office, the California Medical Board, NIH, and every journal that had published Nathan's work. I tailored each report to the institution's priorities: ethical violations for the journals, patient safety concerns for the hospital, and academic integrity for Stanford. At the same time, I built a separate future for myself. MIT's bioengineering program required a full independent review of all submitted research, which worked in my favor. My data stood solid on its own. The day I received the acceptance email, my hands shook, not from disbelief, but from the quiet certainty that I finally had a path out. The biotech startup position came after a professor forwarded my work to a colleague in Boston. They interviewed me over Zoom, impressed with my technical explanations and the precision of my documentation. Within a week, I had an offer. A month later, a lease was signed for a tiny studio in Cambridge. I saved aggressively. Every paycheck from my campus lab job went into a separate account my parents didn't know existed. The months built themselves into a blueprint: collect evidence, verify, organize, prepare exit. Waiting was the hardest part. Every family call, every message from Mom gushing about Nathan's achievements, every forced smile at holidays felt like walking across thin glass. But the calm wasn't manufactured. It was the steadiness of someone who has already chosen a direction and refuses to turn back. On the night before Thanksgiving, while the rest of the house slept, I sat cross-legged on my bed with my laptop glowing against the darkness. Final checks, final attachments, final confirmations that the scheduled emails would deploy at exactly 8 a.m. The cloud storage backups were synced across 3 drives. The reports were sealed. I looked around my childhood room, the medals I had earned but never displayed, the ribbons stuffed in drawers, the textbooks I'd bought with my own part-time money. Everything I would leave behind tomorrow stayed where it was. I packed only what I had earned through my own work. When the clock hit 3:12 a.m., I pressed the schedule button and closed the laptop. My heartbeat was steady, not calm, steadily determined. The kind of determination forged after years spent shrinking yourself to fit a family narrative that was never yours. By sunrise, it would all begin. By the time the clock hit 1 a.m., the kitchen felt too small for the 4 of us. The scent of cinnamon rolls clung to the air, but underneath it sat something sharp and metallic, a sense that the ground had shifted before anyone realized it. Nathan's phone kept buzzing, relentless, urgent. Notifications spilled across the screen faster than he could swipe them away. He tried to open one, but another 3 arrived instantly. "What is this? Why are there so many?" he muttered, voice thinning. Dad stepped closer, tension tightening his jaw. "Nathan, let me see." Nathan pulled the phone back like a threatened animal. "No. Dad, wait, this isn't..." His words scattered as his eyes tracked the subject lines. Stanford Research Compliance Office. Notice of investigation. Stanford Hospital, immediate suspension pending review. California Medical Board. Urgent inquiry regarding protocol violations. Journal of Orthopedic Innovations. Retraction under consideration. Mom barely breathed. Nathan. Sweetheart. Then came the call. Nathan froze when the screen lit up. Stanford Hospital. Chief Resident Office. Dad snatched the phone before Nathan could decline and hit the speaker button. Dr. Miller. A clipped voice began. This is Dr. Robinson. We received extensive documentation this morning indicating severe academic and ethical misconduct connected to your published work and clinical protocols. Nathan swallowed hard. Sir, it's someone is targeting me. My sister, she's unstable. She fabricated. We have side-by-side comparisons and server logs. Doctor, Robinson interrupted. There is nothing fabricated. Until the investigation concludes, your residency is suspended effective immediately. Do not report to clinic. Do not access hospital systems. HR will follow up with details. Mom snatched the counter for balance. Suspended? Just like that? There must be a mistake. My son is brilliant. Doctor, Robinson continued unemotional. We are obligated to examine any potential patient risk. One of the implants using your polymer coating showed inconsistencies in the dosing matrix calculations. The patient is safe, but this is now a legal issue in addition to an academic one. Nathan's knees bent slightly as if the words hit like a physical impact. I didn't know. I didn't mean. The call ended. Silence crashed down like cold water. Dad turned to me. Lauren, what exactly did you send them? I pushed the MIT paperwork slightly forward on the counter, not as a gesture of pride, but as a reminder that I no longer feared their threats. Full documentation, evidence from 7 years, logs, papers, files. You could ruin him, Mom snapped. Her voice cracked into a register I'd never heard before, anger layered with disbelief. How could you do this to your own brother? I met her gaze. He did it to himself. Nathan suddenly lunged across the counter, face blazing with raw panic. You have to retract it. Call them. Tell them you made everything up. I won't, I said. My voice didn't rise. It didn't shake. It simply stayed grounded, the way truth often does, even when it cuts. These are institutions, I added. They don't shut investigations down because someone begs. Nathan slammed his fist onto the counter hard enough to rattle the salt shaker. You were always jealous. You always hated that I succeeded and you didn't. Stop, I said, and the single word sliced through the chaos. You didn't succeed, Nathan. You stole. That's not the same thing. Dad rubbed his forehead, the weight of understanding beginning to settle the kind of realization that rearranges a parent's entire world. Is any of this true? He asked quietly, turning toward Nathan. Nathan didn't answer. His silence was an admission more potent than any confession could be. Then another wave of notifications flooded his phone. NIH. Inquiry regarding grant application integrity. Stanford School of Medicine. Interview required within 24 hours. Nathan sank into a chair, shoulders collapsing inward. They're going to destroy me, he whispered. Everything I worked for. Mom clutched his arm. We can fix this. We can talk to someone, a lawyer, a dean, someone who understands what he meant. What he meant, I echoed softly, doesn't erase what he did. A tear slipped down Mom's cheek. You don't understand. The family, the name, everything we've built. But I understood more than she realized. For years, our family's identity revolved around Nathan's supposed excellence. Without it, the facade cracked. And once a facade cracks, real structure, good or rotten, reveals itself. My phone buzzed with a notification. Orientation details attached. Welcome to Cambridge. The timing felt almost cinematic. Nathan looked up at me again, eyes wide, voice trembling. You're going to watch them ruin me. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel satisfaction. What settled inside me was something steadier recognition of the point where truth diverges from loyalty. You chose this path, I said. I just stopped covering the damage. The kitchen, warm with the smell of cinnamon and cooked turkey, felt like a battlefield, one side clinging to a collapsing fantasy, the other standing in the open air of reality. Thanksgiving morning had finally revealed which of us had been telling the truth all along. By noon, the house felt hollow, as if the morning had punched holes straight through it. Mom had canceled the Thanksgiving brunch with a quick family emergency text, and now the cold turkey sat abandoned beside untouched pies. Nathan paced upstairs like a storm trapped behind a door. I stayed at the kitchen table with a mug of cold coffee, watching my phone light up with emails from institutions confirming receipt of my reports. On any other day, it might have felt like validation. Today, it made everything heavier. Dad stood by the window talking in that stiff, controlled voice he used during complex negotiations. "Yes, I understand. Revocation is possible." End quote. When he finally hung up, he looked older, as if the news had carved lines deeper into his face. Mom sat across from me, arms locked tight around herself. Her mascara had smudged, making her look exhausted, but her eyes stayed sharp, searching, frantic. Dad spoke first. "Harvard is opening a formal investigation. If they confirm multi-year plagiarism, they can revoke the degree and reclaim scholarship funds." "Around 200,000, Mom inhaled sharply. "We don't have that money. We have retirement," Dad answered quietly. "Equity, investments. That's our future," she whispered. "A future built entirely around Nathan." Mom turned to me suddenly. "Lauren, call them. Tell them you misunderstood something. There must be a way to stop this." Her voice rose as if desperation could change reality. "I didn't misunderstand," I said. "I documented. You're his sister. Families don't do this." I held her gaze. "He created this. I just stopped hiding it. He was under pressure." "That's not the same thing." "It wasn't one moment of pressure, Mom. It was 7 years." She flinched as if the number had hit her physically. Dad exhaled and sat down. "Karen, the logs Harvard sent, and the hospital data, match what Lauren submitted. This isn't a misunderstanding." Mom shook her head, dazed. "I believed him. Every word. How do I accept that my son lied to me for years?" "You don't have to accept it today," I said. "But it's still true." She studied me with a strange mix of hurt and disbelief. "You sound so cold." The words stung, but I let it settle. "I tried for years to earn your approval," I said softly. "Competitions, scholarships, late-night labs. But the best I ever got was you comparing me to him. You think I'm cold because I don't care. I feel this way because I cared and it never mattered." Her expression cracked anger, regret, confusion all tangled. "I didn't know," she whispered. "We just wanted you both to succeed. You wanted Nathan to succeed. You wanted me not to make waves." Silence stretched between us. Upstairs, Nathan slammed a door. His voice rose in frantic bursts, probably arguing with a lawyer. For a moment, I remembered teaching him to ride a bike, how he used to glance back to make sure I hadn't let go. Now he wouldn't look back even if the ground vanished under him. Mom pressed a hand to her forehead. "What happens now? For Nathan, investigations, meetings, lawyers. Some of this is out of our hands. And us?" she whispered. "This family? Are we supposed to pretend we're fine with what you did?" "What I did. I'm leaving for Boston in January," I said. "MIT, the job, the apartment it's set. I won't be here for everything you're afraid of. You don't need to pretend you're fine with me. You just need to stop asking me to lie." Her eyes filled not with rage this time, but something lost. "When did I lose you?" "You never really had me," I said gently. "You had an idea of me that fit around Nathan. That's what you're losing." She looked away, staring at her hands like she was seeing them for the first time. Dad spoke quietly. "We can be upset about consequences and still admit Nathan created the problem. Those truths can exist together," Mom whispered. "I don't know how to be a mother who admits that." "You start by not asking me to clean up his damage," I said. "Let the institutions do their part. You rethink how you treat your kids." Her shoulders slumped. The fight left her, replaced by a heavy, fragile understanding. "Will you ever come home for Thanksgiving again?" she asked. "I don't know," I answered honestly. "It depends on whether the truth has a place here." Upstairs, Nathan's voice rose again, fear, denial, pleading. Mom flinched, but she didn't ask me to fix it this time. For today, that was enough. 6 months later, Boston felt nothing like the house I left behind. Winter clung to the edges of the Charles River. Students hurried across MIT's courtyard with steaming cups in their hands, and the world outside my apartment smelled faintly of snow and steel. My research had become the center of my daily life. Polymer simulations, lab meetings, and long evenings writing reports for the biotech startup. Everything here moved forward. Nothing circled the same arguments on repeat. I was ending a late shift in the lab when my phone buzzed an unknown number from my hometown. I ignored it. Then a second call came. Same number. The third time, something in my chest tightened, the way a memory sometimes pulls instead of fades. I stepped into the hallway and answered. "Lauren?" A voice asked, soft, shaky. It took me a moment to recognize it. "Mom," she exhaled when she heard me speak, like she had been holding her breath for months. "I didn't know if you'd pick up," she murmured. I leaned against the wall, feeling the hum of the fluorescent lights above me. "I'm here. What's going on?" For a moment, she didn't answer. I could hear muffled conversation behind her voices rising, then cutting off sharply. "It's Nathan," she said. "He's home for a while. Your father and I thought it'd be good for him to stay with us during the court hearings, but things have been difficult. He doesn't talk to us. He barely sleeps." Her voice cracked. Not with anger this time, just exhaustion. "He got a letter today. From the medical board. They're finalizing the revocation. He's not taking it well." I closed my eyes. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel guilty. What came instead was a weight not mine to carry, but one I understood. "Why are you calling me?" I asked gently. Mom's breath caught. "Because you were the only one who ever told the truth, even when I didn't want to hear it, and I don't know how to help him." A long silence settled between us, filled with the echo of 6 months of distance. I didn't rush to fill it. "Mom," I said slowly, "he has to face the consequences. That's part of healing for him, and for you." "I know." Her voice trembled. I just hoped, maybe you could talk to him. You're the only person he listens to when he's not pretending." I felt the old familiar pull the reflex to step in, to soften, to fix what wasn't mine. But this time I recognized it, and recognized the cost. "I can talk to him," I said, "but it can't be to clean up his mess or make him feel better about what he did. It can only be the truth. That's all I'm asking." Back at my apartment, I sat on the edge of my bed, waiting for the call to connect. When Nathan finally answered, his voice sounded small, far smaller than the larger-than-life brother I grew up with. "What do you want?" he asked, brittle. "To check on you." He laughed short, sharp. "Oh, so now you care?" "I never stopped caring," I said. "I just stopped lying." He didn't answer right away. When he did, his voice was lower, stripped of the bravado that had once coated everything he said. "They took it all," he whispered. "The degree, the license, the fellowship, everything. I don't even know who I am without it." My throat tightened not out of pity, but recognition. "You're someone who can start over," I said. "Someone who doesn't have to lie anymore to feel valued." "It's not that simple." "It never is," I replied. "But you can rebuild something real. Or you can keep grieving the version of yourself you pretended to be. That's your choice." A shaky breath came through the line. "I'm angry at you," he confessed. "But I think I needed someone to stop me. No one else ever did." I let that sink in for both of us. "I'm not asking for forgiveness," Nathan said. "But I'm sorry. For everything. Especially for what I said to you that morning." I didn't rush to answer. He deserved honesty, the kind I hadn't had the chance to give him before. "I forgive you," I said. "But that doesn't mean we go back to the way things were." "I know." A beat passed, softer this time. "Are you coming home for Thanksgiving?" he asked quietly. "Maybe," I said, "if we're all ready to meet each other honestly." Mom's voice floated faintly in the background, calling his name gently. Nothing like the panicked shouting months ago. Something in her tone had changed, less denial, more grounding. "We're trying, Lauren," Nathan said. "Mom and Dad, they're trying too. It's messy." "It should be," I answered. "Messy is real." When the call ended, I stared at the glow of the laptop on my desk, my research graphs, my drafts, my real work. For the first time, none of it felt overshadowed by a comparison. It belonged to me, entirely. Outside, snow began to fall in slow, deliberate flakes, dusting the windowsill. I watched them gather cold, quiet, honest. Maybe family could rebuild too, the same way research does. Not by pretending mistakes didn't happen, but by learning from the ruins they leave behind. And for the first time, the idea of going home didn't feel like stepping into a battlefield. It felt like the start of something possible.